Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflict, your weekly developer podcast where Frank and I debate what version of iOS we should support. Okay, so Frank has debated here. I've been in a mindset as I talk to different customers. We're not going to reference any names or anything like that. That usually when you're releasing iOS apps, you want to support when you release apps, when you release software, Frank, you would like to have the most users as humanly possible.
Yes.
But the problem with this is that usually means it's to support older operating systems to have the maximum users in general. This is an age-old debate. Yep. So I've approached this as usually N-2. So N-2, Frank. How do I sound? Do I sound okay? Do I sound okay?
Hi, James. You're reporting from a new location, it looks like. You sound fine.
Beautiful Lisbon, Portugal, and I have this nice microphone. You see that? It's like out of frame. I took a travel mic with me. I bought a new travel mic. Thank you, LLC, for letting me do this. It's a very nice little microphone. I think it sounds it's pretty good. And just right out of frame of the Logitech Brio 100, which is a very cheap webcam. It's $20 and looks pretty cheap as well. But it's $20 and very small, and I don't care if something happens to it. So N-2 would mean if they just released iOS 18, you would support 18, 17, and 16. N, the current number, -2. Now this gets a little bit
by
finicky.
one error, so you're actually supporting 3 operating systems. Funny.
Yeah, you support N -2.
Got it.
Yeah. So yeah, no, this makes sense. It's not
okay.
N-1.
No,
it's N.
It makes sense.
Your minimal support is N-2. So what you're saying is that you are supporting the latest operating system plus 2 years back.
Yeah,
basically. Okay.
Yeah. And that's why I asked you when we started this conversation off air, and you're all just coming in with us here. I was like, what is N, James? Define N. But okay, it's releases. N is releases. So you're saying I should support up to 2 ago. This all kicked off because I was supporting iOS 12 up to not too long ago, and that's ridiculous. So please keep explaining your N-2 strategy.
Now the question is, when in the life cycle of N do you apply N-2?
Right. Okay. That is the beginning or the end, because that tells you how many years you're actually covering. But I'm not sure I agree with this philosophy.
And it's a little bit tricky because actually getting these iOS version numbers are not necessarily easy, in my opinion, because it's not like Apple necessarily shows you. And then a lot of what you're looking for is iOS version share market that happens to be up to date by some telemetry system, maybe that has adoption numbers out by them. It's a little bit hard to see. So like, what are you, how and when are you actually looking at this? And the reason for this would be that you're supporting new operating systems, and what you're looking to do is remove support for older versions because you don't want to test on those older devices. But then also you ideally would like remove code that's like, doing if cases around version numbers to clean up code as well, probably ideally.
I have a totally different reason. I don't mind the if statements, not a big deal. I don't even mind the testing. It's kind of fun to break out the old devices. What usually gets me to upgrade is the SDKs just don't work anymore on the old devices. And that's actually what I'm running into right now. Last week, we were talking about upgrading our UIs for Xcode 26, which I've been having fun. I've been improving all my apps. But then I came to test my iOS 12 devices and hard crash, right? Like it doesn't even get the crash reporter log fully written. Like it is a full stop app not running kind of thing. So it turns out Xcode 26 is just incapable of generating iOS 12 builds anymore. So that's one reason. The second reason is I don't have anything to test on.
Now, that being said, the thing that you are looking at is like, okay, let's talk about devices, right? Mm-hmm. And are you even going to provide a good app experience there necessarily? So iOS 12 means that you would support the iPhone 6 and 5S because that's the last OS that they got there.
Classic. Can you imagine An iPhone. I remember being a young lad standing in line trying to get my 5S and then eventually my 6S so many years ago. It's funny. That's why the N-2 doesn't even make 100% sense to me because it doesn't tell you exactly how many devices people are going to support because Apple's a little inconsistent on when they start dropping device support. It doesn't exactly line up with their version numbers.
Totally. In fact, iOS 13 and 14 didn't drop any devices, and then 15 and 16 and 17 different didn't, and then 18 did, and then 26 didn't as far as like devices. So any current device that was actually no, that's wrong. It's actually very tricky.
It's
So
hard to,
iOS,
yeah.
yeah, for iOS 18, XS and XR did not get support for it. So any devices besides those did get iOS 26.
Yeah.
So here's the tricky part is that getting real-time statistical data on this is tricky. So
Mm.
for example, we were looking at the iOS. There's two ways of looking at this. There's the iOS version by device, which is like what we're saying is like what devices would we want to potentially support. So for example, if you supported iOS 26 and 18, you would go all the way back to XR, which are the 2018 models. So that's 7 years of devices
It's not bad,
there.
really. Yeah.
Yes. However, by supporting iOS 17, you actually get no benefit because there are no devices that can't run 18 that can run
Yeah.
17. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's a policy I've had to debate within myself because in general, I used to look at version numbers, but now I look at device numbers because, I used to say, well, if someone's running 17, they want to run 17, that they're living that 17 life, they could upgrade to 18, but they're choosing not to. Do I still support 17? And I've kind of flip-flopped on that. I've changed my perspective over the years. My new perspective is basically if they're choosing not to upgrade to the latest OS, that's kind of on them.
Yeah.
I hate to drop customers, but if you're not using yeah, if you're choosing not to upgrade, then I think you're also choosing not to get the latest apps. Like that's kind of a conscientious decision you're making. So my new decision metric is simply can they upgrade to 18? So I'm not losing those devices in my head unless they are choosing not to upgrade to 18, etc.
Correct. Yeah. I think from a general standpoint for companies, I think that there is a stance for like support policy. So, for example, you know, any, you know, I don't know what Microsoft support policy is than I have our apps, but I've seen quite a few companies are like, hey, here's our supported version of Android. Here's our support of iOS. Here's what we're going to support. And just we make a hard decision every year when a new version releases. The first version we release after that major OS release goes to GA, we're going to do N-1, N-2, N-3. And the idea there is that while maybe supporting iOS 17 doesn't make any sense, from a company standpoint, it means you don't have to go update a bunch of documentation and support policies, right? So I think independent developer hat versus
Yeah.
company hat is a little bit different. But here's the interesting part is if you actually go to developer.apple.com/support/app-store, Apple will give you some up-to-date information as of 4 months ago.
Close enough. It
Good
doesn't
enough.
help when there's a new release, though. To your point of when in the cycle do you start thinking about this stuff?
Correct. So in June 4th, 2005, that's this year, we were told that devices that transacted on the App Store, which means that they updated or downloaded apps, so transacted, did some transaction, uh, 88% were on iOS 18,
Pretty
8%
good.
were on iOS 17, and 4% were on iOS 16 or earlier. And that was 4 months ago. Now, what's really fascinating is that they also have a statistic, which is all devices. So these are devices that
Mhm.
aren't transacting with the App Store. But in
Yeah.
that scenario, it is 1 in 10. So it is 91% are on 18 or 17, and then 9% are on 16 and earlier in that case, in
Yeah.
general. So again, I'm not sure what transacted means. It doesn't necessarily define transacted that I can see here, but I have to imagine it's at least purchasing or updating or downloading an app,
Updating. Yeah,
but does
probably.
updating count is the question. I'm not
I would
positive. I'd
guess.
assume. I would guess too. Now, the fascinating part too, on top of this, that iPad is also vastly different in this regards. iPad users upgrade much slower. In fact, it mirrors the. It's actually worse in every version of iOS. In
Yeah,
fact, devices transacting with the App Store. Uh, oh, and this is also very interesting, which they say uh, see, this is where the numbers, you have to really read into them, by the way. I've already been tripped up on it. So
yeah.
88% of devices wait, what does this say? Okay. So this is every device. Okay, I've read this wrong. Every device that is transacted on the App Store in general since June 4th. So that's the only way they know. So 88% of all devices introduced in the last 4 years. Okay, so newer devices. I get it. Newer devices for iPhone are 88.84%, right? So that is in the last 4 years, that is less than half of the phones that could be upgraded on there. So all devices, any device that could run iOS 18 or any version that is transacting with the App Store, 82% iOS 18, 9% iOS 17, 9% earlier. And then iPad gets much worse. So iPads within the last 4 years are 81, 12% on iPad OS 17, and then 7% on earlier. So at least they get 17 a little bit more. And then it's actually even worse for all iPad OS devices, which makes complete sense because people keep their iPads for a long time. It's
Yeah.
70%, 71% on iPad OS 18, 14 on 17, and 15% on earlier. So that means 3 in 10 people are on 17 and older. Now, this is 4-month-old data. And of course, people transacting, but also this is all devices is what I would look at. The last 4 years, that doesn't make any sense, Apple. Like, wouldn't you know
No.
that in general? So you really want to look at that lower number. So you really would be looking at um, um, iOS 17 as the indicator, which is hard because like 16 you would kind of want in there as well, but you're kind of looking at 1 in 10. So it's dropping 10% of your users or 15% of your
A lot.
users. But we're not taking into account the last 4 months of data. And I'm not sure how
Right.
many tickers that will actually change. Um, and if I look at the iOSref.com website, this is, it does kind of mirror that in many regards. They're saying here, iOS, um, yeah, cumulative usage of iOS 17 and up is about 85%, and 16 is 92, and then really 15 and 14, you really drop like really. There's some number that you're kind of threshold of, 15 and 14 are very similar, numbers. Basically, you're not really dropping
Right.
anybody. But again, this data is from June 2000 to June 11th. So again, it's like,
Yeah.
how do you make an educated decision at all when these numbers are not accurate?
Yeah, so as someone who lives off the App Store, that's literally the question I've been asking myself all morning.
Mm.
So given that there's just practical things, so I can't support iOS 12 anymore. It's just from a practical development point of view. I just can't. So the question is, what version do you support? And then you just kind of have to take it from there. My policy is just as far back as I can go without driving myself insane. Because yeah, every time you raise the version number, you lose customers. Every time an SDK raises their minimum operating system, you just lose customers. And if you're making money off the App Store, that's just no bueno, not good. Um, so big corps probably have a different number, and like you said, because they have support policies and all this kind of stuff, mine is simply, can I support it, and all that. And so when I look at these numbers, I'm not using these numbers to make a decision. I'm looking at these numbers of what are my sales going to go down by if I increase this number. And the reason I think you see like the big number, 4%, 4% up to 9% for the 17 and older, it's because it's iOS 15. iOS 15 was kind of the last plateau. So as a general, iPads are different. iPads are all over the place. But for phones, they basically, you could get up to 12, and then you could get up to 15, and then you can get up to 18. So 18, 15, and 12 are kind of the places to look for support. Um, 12, like I said, it's just not going to happen anymore. Not if you want to use modern SDKs. iPads are a little more gross. they some can get up to 16 and 17 versus those. So I think that you can really get lost in these numbers. So I simplify it down to what can I feasibly support. Xcode 26 is still releasing simulators or supporting simulators for iOS 15. If someone has a phone that can get 13 or 14, they can get 15 also. So it
Yeah.
just seems logical to me to just go there. But it is interesting to note. So looking at the cumulative stats, if you support iOS 15, you support 96.3% of the market. That's not bad, in my
Yeah.
opinion, because if you then support 14 or 13 or 12, you can get up to, you can go from basically 97% to 98%. And that's not that's a lot of work supporting iOS 12 to gain 1 more percent of the market. So by choosing something like iOS 15, I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to have to be happy with not supporting 3.7% of the available market out there. And that stinks. But it's not like 10%, that's not
Yeah.
10% of my sales aren't going to disappear. I can swallow 3.7% of my sales going away.
The interesting part is we say all this, and I'm sure we've probably actually had a podcast talking about this exact
I'm sure.
subject. I'm sure we have after 485 or whatever, it's what happens. But the interesting part here is that surprisingly, none of these numbers that we just talked about for the last 16 minutes actually matter. What
Yeah.
actually matters is what is your distribution of your
Yes.
users on your application. And that would be
Yeah.
a per application device. And I'm pretty sure Android does a pretty good job there. You could, of course, have analytics, and you could be
Mhm.
scraping sweet data in multiple ways and sending it to some
With an
server
appropriate
to.
privacy policy, yes.
Mhm. You could be doing that as well. And you could see a distribution of active users. Now, there's two ways of looking at this, which is one, are you abandoning active users? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't actually know about potential users that could be dropping, which is the one that we were just talking about. Those are
Mhm.
potential purchasers, right? You could, though, historically say, okay, my users of my app historically are actually 98% on iOS 17 or iOS 18. And then, okay, I feel
Mhm.
really good about dropping all the other versions because the historical data analytics part of my mind is saying that, yes, I could drop these numbers, at least from current active users. Again, potential users, different in general.
Mhm.
Um, there's that. But I'm assuming, Frank, that you have no way of telling and looking at this data.
I actually do have a few ways. Some of my apps actually do include some analytics. Now, am I crazy? But I thought that Apple sales figures used to tell us operating system version numbers. Am I hallucinating? Because I was digging through that website, James, just trying to find operating system version numbers, and I could not find a gosh darn thing. So I don't know if they removed it or if I was just imagining it. So a few of my apps, though, do contain the beautiful, wonderful Microsoft App Center SDK that is no longer supported. Talk about support. And so I will be losing this at some point. Fortunately, they support more than N-2. It's still going strong for at least, I don't know, a couple more months until they finally do shut down the servers. And so this is what actually got me on the whole iOS 15 bandwagon because
Ah,
I was still seeing, I was digging through my logs, checking out. I only really care about crashes and errors. I don't try to snoop on the users. And there are still crashes on iOS 15 coming up in my logs for all my apps. Not, I mean, I think it's just because like you said, iPads are hard. People just don't upgrade them, and if they're running version 15, it's good enough. I think that's like the iPad Air 2. I think it's who knows? There's too many iPads out there, but I see iOS 15 showing up in my logs, so that's how I know as a gut feel I have active users using 15. Now, as a developer trying to make money on the store, does it matter? That sounds terrible because these are active users who have already paid for my app
Wow.
versus
Wow,
trying
Frank.
to,
Wow.
yeah, see, I didn't want to say it, but I said it. I went there versus actually attracting new customers that will download the app and all that. But thank goodness I don't see any like 14s popping up or 13s or 12s or anything like that. And so I am happy to continue to support my active users with 15, but hopefully all new users will be using like 26 or something like that. So I do actually have real app data, not for all my apps, but for my big ones, I do. And I do see some of these old operating systems popping up.
It makes a lot of sense. I think what's interesting there is if you are going through your crash logs and all your crashes are on iOS 15, the question is, should you be supporting iOS
Right.
15? And do you have a device that is running iOS 15? And then additionally, if you have to go buy a device that is running iOS
Uh huh.
15 for a certain amount of money, will you ever reap the return
Right.
potentially on the device and shipping costs and time costs, by the way, of you actually doing this versus just dropping support for that version number, Frank?
Funny you should ask, because I was going through that exact dilemma today. I was on eBay today. I'm not joking. I was searching for iPhone 6Ss. Turns out you can get some nice models on there for anywhere between, I would say, $50 to $80, depending on how much memory you want and whether you want rose gold or not. There were some real funny options back in the day. There was gold also, not just rose gold, but gold. And it was funny because I was like, I had one test device, my old test device, which was an iOS 12. And like I said, I just couldn't get the app to run. And I'm more fine. I'm dropping 12. I grabbed the oldest device I could find on my shelf, started it up. And you know what version it was running, James? iOS
18.
18.
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
18 goes back a long ways, it turns out. So I was like, well, that's funny. That's the oldest device on my shelf. What about the oldest device in the boxes I have in my closet? So I did the classic rummaging through the closet looking for old test devices because I have a general policy. Whenever my family's like, I have an old phone I'm getting rid of, I'm like, I'll take it because
Yeah.
I always just need test devices for my apps. And so I was rummaging, and nothing. This one's either too old, like it can't even get up to 12, or it's too new and just runs 18. Because, gosh, it turns out 18 runs on a lot of devices.
It does.
Yeah. Finally, James, I found the most beautiful classic. It's even labeled. That's how good it is.
Mm.
iPhone 7 Plus.
Wow.
Running the beautiful iOS 15. It's even an old
Nice.
version of iOS 15. And thank goodness I was able to put away my eBay catalog because, yeah, I would have had to spend between $50 and $80. And would I have recouped that cost? Probably not. Probably not. New customers, iOS 15 new customer purchasing the app. It's a small market. Let's see, if we go to the numbers, the market size is about okay, never mind. It's actually a big market. It's 20% of the market would be stuck on iOS 15. I think I'm
On
reading this.
iOS 15, that can't be correct.
It's weird. Well, the cumulative for iOS 18 is 76% of the market.
Yes.
The cumulative for iOS 15 is 96% of the market. So there's a fair number of people between 15 and
No,
18.
no, no. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, this is saying that 96% of the people have iOS 15 or greater.
Right. Okay. So it won't
So,
be 20%.
correct, it would not be. Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
if you drop support for, okay, so then the difference here is like iOS 12 is the one that you had supported, right? So the
Yeah.
difference between iOS 15 and iOS 12 is 1.5%. So 1.5% people are running 14, 13, or 12.
These numbers are maddening. Anyway,
They are
I would say
maddening, correct?
it's still a good chunk of customers, I think, are still rocking the 15. Given that I was still able to find a device in my closet that that topped out at 15. You know,
Well,
you go to like update and
what it
that's
is if you dropped 15, the diff between 16 and 15 is what we're looking at here is,
Mhm.
again, this is from like June, but is about 4%. So we're saying 4% of people, if you didn't support that, and then
Yeah,
potentially as you bump this, you'd be also losing
yeah,
another. So you're losing like maybe 5 or 6% of potential
right.
customers, which is
And if
like,
I went
not
all the way to
small.
Yeah, and if I went all the way to 18, which is n minus 1, I
One.
guess, in your system, yeah, that would be even more terrible, even more dramatic. And these numbers are a little bit skewed because of the iPad. The iPhone has different plateaus than the iPad. But your
Yes.
n minus 2 is not too bad, but I would, in my case, n minus 4 is feeling a little bit safer for me, and I'm kind of enjoying it. Um, but yeah, so would I earn back $50 to $80? I was willing to do it because I had this thing in my head that if I can support it, I will support it. I don't know where that bug came from. I think it's an old Microsoft thing. B is backwards compatible. I saw someone running like SQL Server 3 on a Windows server on a modern Windows Server machine. So I think I just, if I can support it, I want to. I'd be willing to spend $80 to support it. Thankfully, I don't have to. I found one in the closet. But I would have spent the $80.
Yeah, it's kind of like you also want to think about like what is the actual, there's another thing too, which is like, is it supported or not? Like the actual device itself.
Hmm.
And I think that technically like, oh, there's a lot of like, I'm looking at like end of life.date on the
Yeah.
iPhone, and there's discontinued, but there's a supported, and like it goes all the way back to iOS XS, XSXR.
Yeah.
Technically, I don't know when this was last updated, but
And
I'm just
Apple has
saying.
these funny monikers. They have vintage and obsolete as the monikers they use. They have no practical meaning for an app developer, but it's really funny to see Apple labeling things as obsolete and vintage. But you know what? Looking at the eBay iPhone 6s sales page. There are people in the last month buying it and being very happy with the phone that they purchased. And I
Yeah.
have to say, I've been using iOS 15 all day. Um, it's fine. Like, honestly, it still has dark mode. I'm surprised at what features it has, because usually when I play this game, I'm going back to such an old version. It feels like, how is this even usable? Why am I supporting this or any of that? Man, I think we've been saying on this podcast, iOS has really plateaued, because iOS 15 feels absolutely fine. It feels modern. It looks modern to my eyes. It's missing one or two little things, but gosh, they're little. It doesn't have the glass effect, but I totally get why people are content hanging out on iOS 15.
And I think for a long time, I think this year, to kind of put a little stamp on this too, is like this year also feels a little bit different because of iOS 26. And specifically, there's 2 points that we've talked about, I think, in a previous podcast. Like one, this is a larger shift. People are much more aware of significant UI changes, and people
Yeah.
inherently do not like change. Like think about Windows 7 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 11, Mac OS 26. I've Twitter lit up today in the last 24, 48 hours of just people complaining and basically like saying I'm going to give up my Mac and go back to Windows or get a Linux machine. Just some people I follow, like in the sphere, which pretty diehard Mac users, and very fascinating. And then the other part too is I think the that this is a larger revision, so people might actually wait longer to upgrade than previous versions. And then additionally, onto that, there's this moment that we talked about, I think last week or the week before, maybe on the pod, maybe off the pod, but there's a moment, and when you go into the settings and the upgrade, there is a moment in time where they have iOS 18 up top, and then do you want to upgrade to iOS 26? And
Right.
then that is like, it's not an opt in, you have to opt in for it. But then at some point,
Right.
it'll be more aggressive, kind of like, I don't think they force you to upgrade, obviously, because there's that, but it's much more prevalent. And I think that is usually around the .1 release, I believe. So
Okay.
that's my feeling. But I don't have anything to verify because I only have iOS 26 now on all my devices. So there's that aspect of it. But yeah, so I think those are the
Yeah.
two distinguishing factors to say, okay, for this release, do I wait a little bit longer to N-2 or N-4, N- whatever? Because there's that. I mean, granted, you could then say, okay, well, how many people are even eligible for iOS 26, right? In
Yeah.
general, right? So that might also, but you might wait a little bit longer in general.
Yeah, and the features for it. Like it's a little disheartening to me that Apple Intelligence got coupled with the Glass UI because it seems like a lot of people aren't upgrading because they don't love the Glass UI. I think it'll grow on
Mm,
them, but also we've complained about it a bunch on this show, so we're in that club too. But it's annoying that like a fundamental technology like Apple Intelligence, which is really a powerful thing that can really enhance a lot of apps, is it's going to hold back the operating
yeah,
system. I think that's why I think the N-2 policy is just a little too myopic. It's a little too simple. I think you really got to look at, maybe you should look at the numbers and the actual install base and all that stuff. But if you pay attention to Apple at all, you know roughly are people upgrading or not? No, they're not upgrading
yeah,
right now. So if you're going to implement an N-2, you better wait until next May or something, the coming May, and then you can implement your N-2. But I think you got to be a little more strategic and think it through a bit because, yeah, I think iOS 26 is going to be a slower adoption than 18. 18, I cannot tell the difference between 18 and 15. I pick up the device, they both are a light shade of gray everywhere and they look about the same.
yeah.
But iOS 26 definitely has a distinct look compared to them.
What I'd be interested on you have your device in front of you. I don't know if it's on or not, but I'd be interested in
Hmm.
going into the settings and actually what the upgrade looks like.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I've been doing it all day because I'm always curious what the maximum version number is. Because even when I say I want to support iOS 15, there's a dot after that 15. Am I
correct.
supporting 15.0, 15? Because it turns out the only simulators that properly work on Apple are 15.5. um, this is probably too hard for you to see, but Apple is curious if I would like to install iOS 15.8.5.
Ah,
So that's as high as I guess 15 has gotten these days,
and does
which is really
that device doesn't get 16?
no 16. 16 is
Ah,
not a plateau. 16 is not a plateau. 17 is not a plateau. You're either 15 or 18.
see
There
what I
are
would have
no
been really interested in is if that one could upgrade and what does it look like
no.
today? Is it recommending the newer
Oh
upgrade
right.
or keeping, you know what I mean? Now that it's been so
Yeah.
long, but interesting 15. So you're going to keep it there basically.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm probably not even going to upgrade to 15.8 because I've noticed in my logs people are using 15.7,
Wow.
15.6. There's even older ones. So, in my app, I'm saying 15.0, and it's a little bit of a lie because I haven't tested on 15.0. I'm
Yeah.
able to test on 15.5. I'm able to test on 15.6. I can't test on the others. I'm just going to hope for the best and watch for emails and all that kind of stuff and watch for crashes in my analytics.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I told you the second oldest device I could find was an old iPad, and it had already gotten upgraded to 18. So
Oh.
once it was past that thing, just whoever had it before me just kept clicking the upgrade button. Just keep on
Yep.
the upgrade train.
Wow. Well, I'm interested to see if anyone else is shipping apps and supporting different versions. Let us know. And again, if you commented on a video from 5 years ago where we had the same conversation, then also let us know. But I think it's a fascinating, it's a business decision and it's also a support decision. And it's how much time do you effort and actually finding a device question as well. And it's hard, right? You can't go backwards,
Hmm.
right? So you can't easily at least go backwards to an earlier version.
If there used to be ways, like the iPhones are tricky because they couple the cellular firmware with them, and
Ah,
sometimes once the cell phone part of the phone has been upgraded, they won't let you go backwards. But if you're willing to brick the cellular part of the phone, I think there are terrible ways you can use to force old versions on.
no.
I considered it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Um, Yeah, because I think the last time we had this conversation, I was arguing between 12 and 13. So that's how old this conversation is.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, can I get this thing down to a 13 or a 14 and try to support there? But that's where I decided 15's a plateau.
Yeah.
Just stick with the plateau.
Stick with it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I like it. We'll see how it turns out for you and how much emails you get over the next year or two on this. And then if you will join the N-2 game and for iOS 27 whenever it comes out. So we'll see what the new plateau is. But yeah, it's going to do it for this week's Merge Conflict. Everyone will be back in the States. I will be back in the States next week. And we'll see what happens. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.